Today on my channel I will make a presentation that I would hope you would like. In the past, when it came to discuss the history of the Gallas, all references started with the writings of Abba Bahiri. Often this Abba Bahiri is only known as a monk who wrote about the invasion of Ethiopia by Gallas. The title of his writing was called Zenahu la Galla. Well, today you will finally find out who this Abba Bahiri is. You will also find out who killed the famous Emperor Fasiledas of Ethiopia. Enjoy the ride into Ethiopian history. Chapter 51. And in the same days King Fasiledas wintered in his Katama of Gorgora, glorifying and giving thanks to God, whereby his kingdom was restored, and there was tranquility and peace, and because it had been removed all the instrument of agitation of the rebels, some with death, and others with prison, and the Ras Sila Crestos thereto wintered with her. And after this in the month of Mascarum the Ras Sila Crestos arose to go to Gojam, and spent the feast of the Holy Cross in the land of Sharka. And in the same month of winter there was great enmity between the Galla and the Yahabata of Boran, and they fought a hard fight, because God sent Satan against them, so that they deceive, and destroy the edifice of their friendship, just as it was said in the book of Kings, who deceived Ahab, that he would go down to Remat and die. And yet as it was said in the second epistle of Paul to the Thessalonians, in chapter 2, and God will send them strength. Deceitful, that they may believe the lie, that they may be condemned all those who do not believe in righteousness, and associate in iniquity. And after Ras Sila Crestos arrived in the land of Gojam, the same Yahabata and Ilmagwazit sent word to Ras Sila Crestos, and to Dejazmak Buko, saying, Behold, we hated each other with the Galla, our lords, and fought, and we reached the blood. Come, receive us quickly, for our origin, and the beginning of our generation, we are yours, not the Galla. And the Ras Sila Crestos, having heard it, sent Asgadar, commander of his vanguard, with many soldiers of war, that they might receive the Yahabata, and that they might fight with the Galla. And then the Dajazmak Buko with his many fighting soldiers passed the river of Abawi, and having met Buko, Sahaphalam of Damat, and Asgadar, came to the land of Bizamo, where Yahabata and Ilmagwazit were. And when the same Yahabata and Ilmagwazit saw them, they were filled with great joy, because they helped them, and they led them to where was Chelehaobo, who had fought with them before. And watching them Buko and Asgadar, the Yahabata and Ilmagwazit made war with Chelehaobo, and vanquished him, and his they slew many, and seized his wife, and his children, and his oxen. And they sent letters of good news, Buko to king his lord, and Asgadar to Ras his lord, and having seen this letter of good news, Ras Sila Crestos sent a letter of Aaron to his brother and his lord, King Fasiledas, saying, Behold, the Galla and the Yabahata hated each other to the point of blood, and after that there was no friendship. And being at a party, and I came to receive Yahabit and Ilmagwazit, and make war on Galla. Arise quickly, king my lord, and come to Gojam, because Tulama came to help Mecca, just like we did Ro the Yahabata, to come, and come quickly to us help us. And after he sent this letter of Aaron, the Ras Sila Crestos passed in Tankua the river of Abawi on the 9th of the month of Heter, and Yahabata the Dajazmak Buko met in the land of Bat, and the Yahabata were filled with great joy. And these Yahabata received the Ras Sila Crestos with chants and ovations, because the emblem of the Ras Sila Crestos was the Quesr of all the Yahabata, when he brought to them his handle of silk and the ring of his fingers, which was of gold, that they might separate themselves from the Galla, their lords, by this sign of business. After the Yahabata of Gedru had separated, and after they had encamped in a land, which was called Asandabo, the Ras Sila Crestos heard that Chelehaobo, whom the Dajazmak Buko and Asgadar vanquished, when fleeing from you, having heard their coming, suddenly met them, fought with them, and caught their women and their oxen. For this reason the Ras Sila Crestos arose from the land of Bat, at the time of the rooster's crow, to pursue Chelehaobo, and found him beyond the Vallico in a land, which was called Guaguata, and there he fought with him there, and he slew many, and caused the mighty men of Chelehaobo to fall, and caught his wives, and his children, and his oxen, and plucked from him the prey of children and women, and the prey of beasts, which he had previously taken from the Yahabata of Gedru, and restored to them, and encamped there. And the next day there came many Yahabata, people on horseback and on foot, who they had received it, because they did not attend on the day they had received it before, because they did not attend on the day Ras Sila Crestos made war on Chelehaobo, and he ordered them to pursue him, and not to let anyone who escaped from him go to Chelehaobo. And they went and pursued him, and found him in the land of Jaran, in the midst of Kun, and they took him very much, prey to beasts and people, and they killed many of them, and Chelehaobo fled from them, and disappeared from the face of the earth. And the Ras Sila Crestos, after he had this success of victory over the Galla of Chelehaobo, returned to make war on Obo, who was in Dirk, and rising from Guaguata, stationed at Chalamo, and getting up from there, the next day he opened the warrary, and their women, and their boys, and the oxen of the Galla were taken, so that they dulled the sight. And also Benero, Seum of Anaria, so he did war against Galla, which was called Akako, anticipating 2 days to the day of the Verari of Ros Sila Crestos, for Ros Sila Crestos sent word to him, saying, I passed from Gojan to make war with Galla, and you come, working as towards the middle, to extinguish the Galla. Therefore Benero made war on Galla, whose name of his tribe was Akako, and he seized their women, and their little ones, and their oxen, leaving them nothing, and slew many of them, and received many Yahabata people on horseback and on foot. And hearing Obo, that they had come against him, by the right and left, the Ros Sila Crestos and Benero, Seum of Anaria, the land was narrow for him, and not knew what to do, and took refuge in Makanasaon, and entered the interior of a jungle in the likeness of Ganga and from Shankala, and Ros Sila Crestos was also chasing him, and parked near Makanasaon, is in the day. Following the Ros Sila Crestos ordered each warrior entered through a gate in the same village, and they entered, led by Yahabata and Ilmaguazit, and slew many, and they tarried in the deed of battle until sunset. And they captured many children and women and oxen from Galla. And on the same day the Ros Sila Crestos tarried on the top of Makanasaon, until the warrior returned, who had dispersed to gather prey. And the Galla fled from Makanasaon to Abajage, and the Sila Shave Crestos pursued him, and sent the Verari against him, and took from him the prey of beasts and people, which they had not account. Then were many Galla of Obo's tribe slain, and the heads of their valiant ones fell before the Ros Sila Crestos, and the Ros Sila Crestos thus made war, and slew for 6 days without rest. And after he obtained this victory by the power of God, glorious and exalted, in the 6th day he returned to the land of Bat, where before he had placed his recoving, and after that he established for them Abagas, who marched in the rear of the Yahabata, and passed over to Gojam. And the king of kings Sultan Sagad, when the message came from the Ros Sila Crestos, how the Yahabata of Boran had separated, in the month of Heater arose in haste from the place of his winter residence, which was Gorgora, and he went by the way of Bad, and came to the land of Sharka, and after this he went down from Gumbli, and encamped in the river of Beer, and marching from Beer, the king arrived at land of Van, and from Van he entered the land of Zalabasa, in which a people dwelt, whose name of their tribe was Bagwana. And when he was there, came Ros Sila Crestos with some Yahabata, and met with the king, and the king was very glad, and received him with good reception, with a cheerful heart and serene countenance, for the sake of conquering Galla and for cause of receiving the Yahabata and Ilmaguazit, and adorned him with beautiful ornaments, and with a silken garment, which was made of silver and gold, and a collar of gold, and the king and Ros Sila Crestos made great feasts. And after that the Yahabata came to meet the king with his great ones and his wise ones, but most of your relatives and of his soldiers left with their recovage. And the king arose from the land of Bagana, and chose from Vambarma a spacious and good land, fit for a career of horses and for the residence of the king's soldiers, and there the king commanded every man of his soldiers to bring his shield and his spear, and formed his chieftain by his squadrons, and each knight mounted his horse, and put on the iron girdle, and put the iron helmet on his head, and all wear their distinctions war captives, just as they always entered the fray. And also the Yahabata came for their chiefs, many being his soldiers, who had left with his recovage, and they met the king. And the Yahabata, seeing the king's soldiers with their badges of war in their crowd, they marveled greatly and were astonished at the multitude of those who were waiting at the king's gate, without his soldiers came who were in his father's country kingdom from one lane to the other lane. And then the king sat on the throne, and the Yahabata drew near, and worshipped him, and saluted him with the salutation of submission and humility, just as a slave submits and humbles himself to his master. The king opened his mouth and said to the Yahabata, Blessed be God, who saved you from death, and delivered you from the bondage of the Galla, your lords, but from now on complete freedom, and escape from the bondage of Satan, and went in peace to the land of baptism, that we may be equal in honor in the kingdom of Christ, the Messiah, whose kingdom will not undergo the change of times, but will exist until the age of endless ages. And some of the Yahabata said, So be it, as is your word, O king. And others said, Leave us until that we complete the time of the Getu, and that our law is not abolished but in due time. And the king did well to the Yahabata, and rewarded them with many gifts. To some he gave good horses, to others he gave mules, and to others he gave Shelamat and many oxen, and gave them the land of Wasan Amba. And established them in Mashakal, and in Fesbadin, and in Arbuk, and in Yamakal,